All right. Very good.
Hi, this is Ralph at Stroke Warrior Radio again. Our program today is kind of multifaceted. We're going to talk with Nikki, who is it Juvan or Juvan?
It's actually Juvan. Yes. Yeah.
Juvan, okay.
Hmm.
And Nikki's a um, teacher, caregiver, and formerly Miss Vermont 1996, which is kind of interesting. Thought I'd throw that in there. Um, Welcome. I'm glad you could
Thank,
make it today.
thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. The purpose of these interviews is to mostly tell stroke survivors and their caregivers what we didn't know, and what we've learned, try and share it with the new people,
Yeah,
whether it's a stroke from a week ago or 10 years ago. I mean, because it always is changing.
absolutely.
So let's start. Your husband's had multiple strokes?
Yes. Yeah. So he actually had his first stroke in October of 2018. I should say his first diagnosed stroke, because
Oh,
actually, when we went in to the ER at that time, they said, "Oh, well, we see evidence of a prior stroke." And he had been sick with similar symptoms about 6 months prior to that, which is what we're assuming was the first one. But three diagnosed strokes at this point. Hopefully, that's it. So the first one was in October of 2018. It was a cerebellar stroke, and so it really affected his balance. He spent a month in acute rehab, and then came home and continued his recovery at home pretty well. In fact, he had really gotten to the point by March where he was really using a cane for the majority of the time. And we were talking about, okay, what does it look like for you to go back to work? And then he had another stroke in March of 2019. And this one was much more complicated because it was in his brain stem. And we were not aware at the beginning that it had affected his swallowing. So he ended up going back and forth between rehab and the hospital with aspiration pneumonia multiple times. Um, and so he ended up, I guess it was about 3 months by the time he was able then to come home after that. And that recovery was definitely harder. Um, and compounded also, he has very bad neuropathy, which part of it was from the stroke, part of it we think now is maybe diabetes related. um, but we were basically, we thought, oh, we're through with the strokes. That's done. Now we can just focus on living life and making the most out of things. Um and then in March of 2022, um he had taken a little bit of a fall. He goes to an adult day center full time because I'm at work, and he really can't be by himself for more than an hour or two. Um, and so when I picked him up that afternoon and I was asking him about this, he was just, there was something different about him. It was like a flatness. Um, he kind of was having trouble finding the right words. And so we ended up going to the emergency room again, and they did a CT scan, didn't show anything, but I kept insisting there is something going on. Um, and of course, we were still masked, back then. And I I went home for the night, went back to see him in the morning, and saw him without his mask. And I noticed the tiniest bit of a droop on one side of his face. And I said, there is something going on. And we live in a small town in Vermont. We have our own hospital, but they don't do MRIs on the weekend. And so I was like, he needs an MRI. He needs an MRI. So it was Monday. They finally gave him the MRI. And I'm sure it was because they just wanted to shut me up. But then they came back to us and said, oh yeah, there was another stroke. So that has sort of thrown us all for a loop. We thought that mean, the doctors had basically assured us that, after the second stroke that he's on the right medications. We found out he did have AFib, so he went on Eliquis. And so to have this third stroke out of the blue, we don't know. We don't know. He could have another stroke. We just don't know what the future holds. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are. And I have found, particularly after the last stroke, and then, the second, and then particularly after the last stroke, a real passion for stroke education and advocacy.
What limitations were caused by the first one? And I sensed a little bit of frustration in your voice about the medical. Maybe it's because it's a small town, not knowing as much as they should have. I mean,
Yeah.
what were the limitations in the beginning, and how did that progress with the second and third?
Yeah, so the first stroke, like I said, it seemed much more straightforward, and his recovery was just really on such a great trajectory. And then the second stroke happened. And I think, given all the other medical challenges during that time, he became very weak. And I also think that at one point, I don't know what it's like, right? I don't know what it's like to be a stroke survivor. But I think there's some people who just are like, I am going to power through and I'm going to work really hard. He doesn't have that self-motivation.
Okay.
But his recovery has certainly continued. I think after the third stroke, that intrinsic motivation has even gone further down.
Okay.
And that flatness has sort of continued. There are moments where I still see that old spark and that sense of humor. But he's perfectly content to spend all weekend just sitting on his iPad.
Okay.
So, in terms of the medical care, we live about an hour from Burlington, which is our largest city in Vermont, and they have a stroke center at the hospital there. And so for the first two strokes, that's where we went. He was transferred up there. For this one, I think because they were so uncertain that it was a stroke in the beginning, and then they were able to be in contact with the neurologists there, they said to us, well, it's not like you can do anything differently if you go up there than we're doing for you down here.
Okay.
But I did have to fight, because then they discharged him and we came home, and it was very clear that he was not near his baseline. And so I started fighting to get him back into inpatient acute rehab. And I contacted all of the doctors that we had seen in the past, and just really pushed for that to happen. And it ended up happening. And he spent another 2 weeks in inpatient rehab, which, that I don't know how we would have, it would have been very difficult.
Yeah. Does he still go to therapies?
He does. Yeah. The other piece that's tricky is insurance and the amount of visits you're allowed. And so you have to be very deliberate in your planning of those PT visits, because it's prohibitively expensive if you were to pay out of pocket, right? So we're limited to whatever they give us per year.
Right.
But he is, and he works very hard when he's there. And because he goes to the adult day center, he's certainly moving throughout the week. But then we get home and on the weekend and it's a little different, but
Yeah, yeah. Do
um,
you feel like um, a lot of what happens to us? I'm a stroke survivor myself,
yeah.
and I think you know, we didn't. The education that we had was very limited. Did you not? Did they not go into the secondary stroke prevention for you? I mean, is that it's
Yeah, well, the funny thing is after that first stroke, they attributed it to uncontrolled diabetes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And so during that time when he was in rehab, we got to know one of the nurses very well, and she started telling us about um, a plant-based diet and how that can really do great things for diabetes. Um, and so we did that, and I'm telling you, like, the numbers were an incredible change in terms of his A1C and his blood pressure and his cholesterol. So when he had that second stroke, it was like out of the blue because we had been doing all of the right things.
right?
Um, and then it was found that he had an AFib. And so then they attributed it to that.
Okay.
Um, the third one, yeah, they just don't know. They just don't know.
Wow.
Uh, and they don't know if, yeah, they just don't know if he'll have another one. But so far, you know, no more.
Yeah. Does he attend any support groups at all, or
We both attend a stroke support group through the UVM Medical Center in Burlington. So that's once a month. But I think I know you had told me that you have a men's stroke support group, which I think if I can get him on to that, that would be really great.
I would
Uh,
love that. I would love that. Yeah, those are the second Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I can send you the Zoom link.
yeah, please do.
Definitely. Do you uh it's you've learned so much, especially
Yes.
having a couple strokes. I mean, my gosh, what is it that you didn't know that you wish you would have known?
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Um,
loaded
I
question.
yeah, I think that in the beginning, I was just so completely overwhelmed with this. He had just turned 55. Um, I'm a little bit younger than he is, so it never even entered my mind, right? So in the beginning, it was just that feeling of complete overwhelm and like, how is this going to change our lives? I think what I wish I had known and what I really want family members and other caregivers to know is just how much you have to advocate for your loved one, um, to the point of being annoying.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you
Really.
just
And
have to be rude.
it's true, and just continue to ask the questions, and make sure and ask follow-up questions. If they use technical terms that you've never heard before, make sure you know what those terms mean. um, so I think that was certainly one of the most important things that I learned. um, and also that there is a large support network out there. And I think they do a really good job when you're in the hospital, kind of in that moment, making sure that you're going to make it through the stroke. Um, and then you go to rehab, and sometimes they don't even send you to rehab. But, we were fortunate to go to an incredible inpatient rehab. Um, and they were amazing. And then all of a sudden, you go home and you lose that support network, and it's just you and your loved one. And that was a real loss for me, particularly because I really depended on them just for their expertise and, for my comfort, my peace of mind that, what, recovery is going to continue and all of these things. But so then you lose that. And so now over the last 5 years, I really have deliberately looked for resources and support that is out there. And it is out there. It's just, they don't tell you about it.
Yeah, exactly. The lack of
Uh,
education is shocking.
yeah. Yeah. So I joke that, whenever we go to see Trent's doctor, that he sees us on the list and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to run away," because I always come with a bunch of questions.
Yeah, well, and the unfortunate part, I think, is we as survivors don't have, I didn't have, I should say, the cognitive ability to know what questions to ask,
Right. Mhm.
and that takes a lot of self-advocacy to learn. But
Yes.
I'm going to jump to the caregiver facet of all of this in your case. I mean,
Mhm.
my God, what a life-changing event it is for caregivers as well.
Mhm.
So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Our entire life, I mean, it's changed forever.
yeah,
Um, and I am very firmly of the belief that we can continue to do anything we want to do, but it requires a lot of planning.
yeah,
um, and
is
we have never flown in an airplane, but we've taken road trips and um, stayed in hotels, and but it requires an immense amount of planning.
tell me about the mental health aspect of it as a caregiver.
Mm,
I'm
yeah. uh,
going to load them up for you today.
um, there's a grief um, that I think I still feel. It still hits me at the weirdest moments, of things that we have lost that we won't be able to do again. Or I watch him, struggle to walk down the hall, and I feel just such sadness for him. Um, so yeah, it's been very hard, not to
Yeah,
mention the fact that I everything rests on me, all the
yeah,
doctor appointments, all the medication management, all of his care rests on me, which is also really scary and stressful in case something were to happen to me. So I very early on, started talking to a therapist. I've started taking medication for depression, um, and I'm still not very good at taking time for myself, because I there's that guilt of well, I don't want to be with my husband. That doesn't seem right, but
right.
yet I I know that's so important.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that.
Well, and that brings up the importance of self-care. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm grateful to hear that you've seen some counseling. I mean, that's so important for both people, the survivor and the caregivers. What's
Mhm.
that look like for you, your self-care? Not as good as you want.
Um,
It never is.
yeah, that's right. No, it definitely is not as good as it should be. You know, I used to do a lot of singing and performing in musical theater, and it's actually how Trent and I met. Um, and particularly since the strokes, that just has not been a possibility. But last summer, I sort of on a whim sent in an application for a scholarship to an adult theater camp in New York City. And it was just like I'm just going to send this in, and I ended up being awarded this scholarship. And it was a 5-day camp. And so I'm telling you, like, I joke that I have a Trent manual because I truly had to like take a lot of time to, first of all, get the care in place and then make sure that the information was communicated. But that was a really huge accomplishment for me and for him too, to be, I mean, he wasn't alone, but to be without me and with other people for, it
Right.
was 7 days that I was gone. So, you know, I don't, I still don't get to do those things as much as I would want to. Um, but I, but that was like a real success. And I feel like that was sort of the turning point to, you know what, you can't lose Nikki. Um, you have to keep finding yourself in the midst of being a caregiver. And so sorry, my cat is digging at something. But so I, try and take quiet time each day, just away from, in another room where I can just sit and be. My faith is very important. And so I would not have been able to get through all of this without God. And starting it, yeah, just having that to hold on to is a really big piece for me. Um, and I try and, put in little things to look forward to. I have a school break coming up, so I'm thinking, oh, I'll take a day and go to the spa and have a massage or
There you
something.
go. There you go. Do you journal at all?
um, that's a good question. I used to journal all the time. And then I think sometimes it gets too painful to journal, like putting those feelings out on paper. So, what I have started doing is writing down 3 things every day that I'm grateful for.
Oh, very
Um,
nice.
and trying to, focus on that because I mean, really, we have been incredibly blessed. And so I need to spend more time thinking about those things, I think.
Well,
um
yeah, one of the things I've learned later on, I started to journal in maybe 3 years, but I wound
mm,
up with two different journals. One was an anger journal, and one was a grateful journal. And
that's a
the
good
anger journal I
idea.
don't share with anybody because it is laced with profanities and just anger. So I think that's one of the important things that helped me in my recovery. So
Hmm.
anyway, just the idea,
Yeah, great
throw
idea.
it out there. What else do you think caregivers should do for themselves? That I
um
mean, go
I
ahead.
think that support groups are also really important for caregivers. I do. So he attends this adult day center, and they are an incredible organization that not only just cares so deeply about their participants, but also the families. And so they run a caregiver support group once a month. But that's not just for stroke survivors. But this past summer, we went to stroke camp um, through the United Stroke Alliance. And that was really a wonderful experience. And I got to know some other caregivers that are spouses. Their spouse is the stroke survivor. And so I've been a part of those. They have started some of their own caregiver support groups that are meant for spouses of stroke survivors. Because I think that, I mean, all support groups are valuable, but I think that when it's the spouse of someone who's a stroke survivor, that's a really, it's a very unique position to be in. And so I have found that that is really the best place to find people that really understand. And so I made some really great connections at stroke camp that I'm still in touch with, and we just will, they have a monthly meeting.
Do you find that it's important to have contacts that you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm going through this right now? Do you do that?
Um, I don't as much as I should, but but yes, this past fall, we both had COVID for the first time, and Trent actually ended up in the hospital. And then he was again in rehab after that because he became so weak. But particularly during that time, those stroke caregivers were a real strong support for me, because they had all gone through other medical issues with their partners besides the strokes. And so being able to just call or text one of them, and saying, I'm really struggling right now, was really helpful.
How did you find all of this? I mean, stroke camp and all that. I mean, that again, it's self-advocacy. Where did you find it and how?
Yeah, well, I think over the last couple years, I've tried to find as many different organizations as I could. And so following them on Facebook or Instagram, and so the United Stroke Alliance was one of those that I just happened to find. And then I started researching them a little bit more and saw that they do these stroke camps. And this coming year is their 20th year of doing stroke camp, and they do it all over the country. Um, and we had to travel to upstate New York. That was the closest for us. But it's my goal to somehow get a stroke camp in Vermont, because I know that there would be a very large population that would enjoy that. Yeah, so again, it's just I Google things and I find some things, and that's why, yeah, I just want people to know what these things are,
Yeah.
stroke. I decided that we were going to go last summer because I also felt like Trent had kind of gotten into a rut, and I needed him to also connect with other stroke survivors in hopes that it would just sort of inspire him and jumpstart him a little bit. And so I sort of said, we're going to go to stroke camp, whether you want to.
What was that? Tell me about stroke camp. What is it? What
It
is it
was,
all about?
yeah, it was a long weekend. So we arrived Friday afternoon and then left Sunday, actually, I guess Sunday early afternoon. Um, and it is like 15 to 20 survivors and their caregivers. There's a national staff that presents the program, but then each sponsoring hospital also then provides, there were nurses on staff, there were PTs on staff, there were OTs on staff, as volunteers. And so there were educational panels with an OT and a PT, and I think there was a mindfulness coach that also sat in on one of them. They had just different fun games. There's a theme about each one. So this last one was TV Land, and so it was, classic TV shows, and so there were silly games, and then also just some pampering, like they had massages and they had manicures, and
Wow.
and we were right on one of the Finger Lakes, and so they got us out on the boat and went around on a boat, and so there was a lot to do, but it also very quickly, I mean, we didn't spend that much time with these people, but it's like by the end we felt like family, because we all had this shared experience as survivors and as caregivers and family members. And nobody looked at you weird if you were in a wheelchair, or you were using a walker, or, your food spilled down in the front of your shirt or whatever. Nobody cared. Everyone was just there for who they were, and celebrating that they were still here. Um, and it was really wonderful. really
Yeah.
wonderful.
I
So I encourage anybody to look into stroke camp. Uh,
yeah, I was surprised when you told me that it's a regional thing, that you can find it all over the country. That's
yeah,
awesome. I'm
yeah.
gonna make sure I contact them. I'm
Hmm.
curious, these events, and these supports, and doesn't that, I know it's, when I get in a support group, afterwards, it's like the motivation is boom after that. How do you maintain that, or try to anyway? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I know that I feel like, well, for me, it has really become such a passion and such a calling for me that I and I do, I still think to myself, oh my gosh, I'm not spending enough time on trying to get the message out, but I'm trying to give myself a little bit of grace that, I'm
yeah,
also working
well,
full
you
time,
have to.
all that stuff. Um, so yeah, I think that just continuing to stay connected to those people, and they're going to help with that motivation too. Um, and so that's why, like, when I think about Trent participating in one of your men's stroke support groups, I hope that that would be a sense of connection for him, um, that could help him to just sort of, yeah, just find that motivation and keep on
Yeah,
going.
yeah. Well, speaking of motivation, and your commitment to getting the word out, you started Stroke Awareness Vermont. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So let's see, in 2022, we were meeting with our stroke support group, and it occurred to me that, every single survivor had such a unique story, and yet there were these commonalities that everyone had experienced. And so I thought, my goodness, people need to hear these stories. Um, and so my daughter and I started collecting those stories, and we had certain interview questions, and either they wrote them and emailed them to us, or we spoke on the phone with them. But it was collected into a booklet that then the University of Vermont Medical Center printed and started distributing to new survivors. Um, and so then we just kept thinking, like, what more can we do? What can we do? And Hannah, my daughter, is also involved in the Miss America organization as a local title holder. And so she has a community service initiative that she um, needs to work on. And so for her, she took on stroke awareness and education as well. And so we've sort of teamed up, and then we decided, you know what, we need to create a place where people can go to read these stories. We can continue collecting these stories, and we can have as comprehensive as we can, a resource base for people, so that they don't have to go digging around. I will have done it for them. So we started Stroke Awareness Vermont. It was launched in the fall. We planned a walk for stroke awareness in our town in conjunction with World Stroke Day. Um, and we're already planning for next year, or this year. My goodness, we're in the next year. And the website went live just around that time too. And it's, yeah, a place hopefully where people are going to be able to go and find support groups, find Stroke Warrior Radio, find different other stroke organizations that can educate and hopefully support them in their recovery and their journey. And so we're still kind of in the infancy stage, but we have high hopes for Stroke Awareness Vermont. Um, and Yeah, very proud of the booklet that started it with the stroke stories, and just continuing to build on that.
Yeah,
Um,
I checked out your Stroke Stories book, and
yeah.
I'm just, it's amazing to me that
Thank
we're working on, a few of my friends and I are working on a 30 questions in 30 days. And one of the things that you say right off the bat in your book is successful stroke rehabilitation depends on a variety of factors: physical, emotional, social, and therapeutic. I mean, my God, I wish I would have known that when I had my stroke.
you.
You
Yeah.
know, I have to commend you on addressing all those issues.
Thank
I'll
you.
send you some information on the stroke awareness organization I belong to too, because we have a book called Just Say Yes to Life.
Yes.
I'm on page 155. But the communication I'm finding, and I think you are too, and that's why you started it, is coming more from our community than it is from the medical community.
That's true. That's
I
true.
mean,
Yeah. I think that, I mean, you look at, it's always so frustrating to me that the American Stroke Association is under the umbrella of the American Heart Association, because of course heart health is so important, but I feel like it just gets swallowed up completely, the stroke part of it. And so I know they're trying their best, but it's, in some ways I think the heart is more relatable for people.
yeah,
um and so yeah, that's why I feel like there's got to be more out there for people to really understand. The statistic is that every 40 seconds someone has a stroke. I mean, people, children, 20-year-olds, it can happen to anybody. And I
yeah,
don't think that message is out there to people, and they don't know what to look for, the signs of a stroke. And it is truly life changing, and
yes,
not not for the better. It
yeah,
really, our family will never be the same. And it's not, we've come to terms with that. And again, we have been so blessed. And there have been some wonderful things that have happened as a result of this. Um, but the future that we had, that we thought we were going to have, um, when we first got married, we are both this is our second marriage. And so we'd only been married 7 years before this happened. And so, that future that we thought we had has completely changed. So that's why I want people to recognize how important it is, um, to know what to look for, and to know that it can happen to anybody.
yeah.
Um,
I actually interviewed a young lady that she's 18, I believe now, but she had her stroke at
yeah.
age 7. You know,
Hmm.
it's happening to younger and younger people
Yeah.
anymore. So,
Yeah.
and it's the number one cause of disability in the United States.
Right.
People, people don't understand. I think one of the things you mentioned about the American heart and American stroke is American heart is a heart attack, is what they're
Yes.
trying to prevent. Stroke
Hmm.
is a brain attack.
Yes.
You know, they're two separate things that can be intertwined to a bit, but a brain
Hmm.
attack is different than a heart attack.
Hmm.
It affects so much.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
amazing. How
Yeah.
how how can we help Awareness Vermont with Stroke Aware
Um,
Radio?
yeah. Well, come visit our website. We would love to continue to gather stories. So if people are stroke survivors or caregivers are interested in sharing their story, we'd love to hear from you. We have an email address, strokeawarenessvermont@gmail.com.
Okay,
Um,
is the Vermont spelled out
it is
or
spelled out.
abbreviated?
That's a really good question.
Okay, well, what's the website?
It's on the website.
There you go. What is the website?
And the website is strokeawarenessvermont spelled out .org.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So you're a nonprofit.
We are moving in that direction.
Okay.
We have not done that yet, but that is our next step. Yes.
Okay. Have you expanded into support groups at all, or that's a plan down
Um,
the road?
that is another goal of ours, is to have our own particular caregiver support group.
Okay.
So that will hopefully be within the next several months.
I have another caregivers group I can refer you to as well,
Oh,
uh,
great.
through our Stroke Awareness Oregon. So
Hmm.
good start for you anyway. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's once a month too. I think it's like 5 o'clock on a Monday or something. So
Hmm.
I'll send that to you as well.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to all of this? I mean, what do you want somebody to know that they should have known?
Yeah. I think that, well, I think, first of all, I want to say how incredible I think you are with what you are doing.
Thank you.
And the fact that, you're coming from it as a survivor, um, is inspiring. And so I'm really thankful to be able to be a little part of this. Um, but yeah, I think just keep asking questions. If you're in the midst of it right now, if your loved one just had a stroke, just keep on those doctors and the nurses, and keep asking questions and keep advocating. Um, and then look for those resources and those supports, because they are out there and you're not alone. And I think that it can be very isolating,
Yeah.
particularly when you first go home and all of a sudden you've lost that support system of doctors and therapists, and it's just you and your spouse in my case. And so
Do,
just,
do you find, did you find, I did, that you had to step back from the fear and take a step back and say, okay, get over this fear. This is what we have to know. Is
yeah,
that
I think for me, I always have to be hopeful, and not focus on the fear. And maybe I do that too much. I don't know. But that's just how I have to function. And so I think that, for me, with building Stroke Awareness Vermont and collecting the stories, like that was all part of having hope for me, and actually very healing for me too. Um, and because it would be too crippling to just constantly be thinking that, today could be the day of the next stroke, right? I can't live that
oh
way.
my gosh, yeah. I've never thought of that. Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah,
and
because there's
for a while, I was struggling with that, but then you just get to a point where it's like, I have to just let that part go and focus on that hope, that either, I don't know, that something will get better for him, or that I can help other people.
yeah. Well, and you have to recognize warriors achieving victories every day. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just getting up in the morning,
Yes,
you
right.
know? I mean, the alternative from having the stroke that we had and surviving is not very good.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Nikki. I really appreciate everything you've shared with us today, and I hope we can do this again soon sometimes.
I would love that. Yes,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thanks. You have a
All
great
right.
weekend.
You too. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye bye.